Have you ever tried learning a language by just listening to it? In the past year, we've spent 700 hours of our lives listening to Comprehensible Input in Spanish. The platform we used to help us get there is Dreaming Spanish. Now, we started in June of 2023. We were not speed runners. We averaged 2 to 3 hours a day, sometimes less because of life. Now, the big questions are, did it work? Did we give up? Did we reach our native fluency? Did anything happen?
Learning a language using an immersion method has been gaining popularity recently. It's actually the method that we all use to learn our native language. The idea is to listen to material that is comprehensible to you at the level you're currently at, and over time leads to long-lasting acquisition of that language. In other words, you understand it and can speak it, even read it and write it in time. It's a concept that's gradually being accepted and understood, and as more and more people start to share their experiences and successes, the concept will only become more embraced and appreciated.
Hola!
Hola.
We are Greg and Lisa, and over a year ago we traveled to Spain for the first time. We both had basic knowledge of Spanish before going to Spain, but we were still scared out of our minds when we landed and realized that the little Spanish we knew was pretty much useless.
Yeah. So I took Spanish in high school and even college, but that was 30-something years ago. And to be honest, I was the type of student who passed an exam and out that information went, never to be seen again. And Greg took 2 years in high school and can't even remember if he took it in college. So if he can't remember if he took it, chances are he doesn't remember what he learned. I also did Duolingo, and it was aburrido.
Right. So as Lisa mentioned, I took 2 years of Spanish in high school, and I took something in college, but I remember more about my favorite meal in college than what I learned in Spanish. So it's understandable that before we left for Spain, I tried to cram as much Spanish as I could, sort of like cramming for a test. So I took about 6 months worth of lessons where I did 2 times per week. I met with an instructor, but we were just talking English and just having a good old time. And of course, I never did my homework.
Wow.
So, but I remember it got to the point that I wasn't really getting much from it. And my teacher was probably wondering, like, why are you even taking these lessons?
Yeah, and I've always had this strange mental block with Spanish for some reason. Like, if you came up to me and spoke Spanish, I would completely shut down and freeze and look straight to Greg as if he could help me.
Oh, gee, thanks.
Yeah. Throughout the years, I tried workbooks and God knows how many flashcard sets, but I never stayed motivated and just kept going. I literally managed to memorize like 20 words at most before we went to Spain. Mm-hmm.
And then now, after our trip to Spain, we felt a little bit defeated because we really struggled with the language. But even still, we had planned to return to Spain, and we knew that learning Spanish was the #1 priority. So we searched and searched and searched for different ways that we can learn Spanish, and then along came Dreaming Spanish, talking about this thing called Comprehensible Input, and we were all in.
Yeah, so after about 150 hours of comprehensible input, we thought it would be a good idea to document our journey. Mm-hmm. So we started this channel. Now, of course, you can go and binge watch all of that, all the videos, but in a nutshell, here's what happened.
Well, when we reached level 3, or about 250 hours, we were having some days of 80% comprehension. And then the very next day, listening to the exact same teacher at the exact same level, our comprehension was somehow now 20%. It was super frustrating at times. And also around this time, we had a hard time focusing on the videos. It would take us, we would just kind of start daydreaming and not really understanding what was going on. But we were able to just kind of push through it. And that was pretty much the story between 230 to 350 hours.
Yeah, then we got completely overzealous and started watching native content at about 400 hours. So it was fun when the English subtitles were on, but I'd say not the most effective method of learning a language. Right. But in reality, the best thing that came out of watching those native content shows way too soon was that when we did go back to listening to Dreaming Spanish and actually watch content that was at our comprehension level, we found that we were able to pull out words and phrases so much easier because they spoke slower.
Right.
So it was actually super exciting.
Yeah, almost too exciting because at 450 to 500 hours, we took it over the top and we just went a little bit crazy. So now the reason we did this was because we knew that our return trip to Spain was just a month away. So we got super nervous. Of course, we wanted to be speaking fluently when we got off the plane. So we went hardcore and we were ready to be native speakers. And of course, we were going to make it all happen in 1 month.
It's kind of funny now that we look back, but at that time we were trying everything possible because we didn't want to have the same experience as we did our last trip to Spain. So it didn't matter that we couldn't understand much of what we were listening to. We were on a mission.
Yeah, and besides, Velvet was amazing. So I don't know. I love that show.
Yeah.
So in February, we were ready for our trip to Spain.
Yeah.
And Dreaming Spanish was put on the test as soon as we got off the plane because I left my passport on the plane. Now, this was a major freak out moment, but it was time to see if all those hours listening to Pablo would pay off. It was our first realization that Dreaming Spanish and Comprehensible Input actually works. We had to have serious conversations right away. I mean, I'm talking, I better understand what's going on here or I'm going home. It was no joke. And thanks to Dreaming Spanish, I was able to navigate the situation. And then after everything kind of settled down, we were pumped because we could tell it was already different than our last trip to Spain. And we were understanding a lot more.
Yeah, after we got back to Spain in February, we really felt like we did too much to try to be fluent before getting to Spain. We just went crazy. But luckily, our Dreaming Spanish community finally got us to calm down. And it wasn't long after getting to Spain that we reached 500 hours, where we finally understood the assignment and went back to listening to content that was comprehensible. So we started sticking to only watching input that we understood, and from that time on, it felt like we were back on track.
Right. So that gets us to where we are now. We're now at about 720 hours.
And when we came to Spain for the first time in early 2023, our Spanish knowledge was super limited. We didn't know how to say welcome, and now we know it's bienvenido. We didn't know how to say mayonnaise. Now we know it's mayonesa.
Right.
We would say no mayonesa instead of sin mayonesa.
Yeah. And I mean, we could be here all day. But the point is that you see now how little we knew before Dreaming Spanish. Now, 1 year later, we're at a point where we can have a conversation with someone who speaks absolutely no English. Now, we don't speak perfect Spanish, but we can communicate.
And now many of the videos that were difficult in the beginning are a lot easier. If we go back and listen to beginner videos, we can understand 100% of the stories and words. We can even understand 100% of the intermediate videos. We may not understand every single word, but we understand what's being said for sure.
Right. So now the advanced videos, now that's kind of a different story. Those are work in progress. But we do have some advanced videos that we understand, like 80 to 90% of what's being said. And obviously a huge difference from where we were just a year ago, basically only knowing a few simple words. So after a year, would we do anything different? That's a great question.
Yeah, I think we would. We would hold off on listening to native movies and TV series until reaching probably the level we are now, or maybe even 800 hours. We would start reading at about 600 hours. If I knew about books like Juan Fernandez's books, Ola Lola, I probably would have started reading at about like 500 hours.
Yeah. And one thing I think that I would do differently is to start crosstalk from the beginning. Now, I say that because we have noticed that our biggest gains have been when we've gone out with Spanish friends. So obviously, speaking with a Spanish speaker makes a huge difference. In fact, we're going to be focusing more on that in the coming year. So after 1 year, there really is there's no doubt that we made the best choice possible for our journey to learn Spanish. Now, we know more now than we have in our entire lifetime, if you can imagine that. And we can't wait to keep going, learning more, and be back here for our 2-year update. It's going to be great. So if you haven't yet, of course, take a second to like the video, subscribe to the channel, click the notification button. That way you'll be notified when we release our next video. Thanks for watching. Venga, vamos.
Adios.